Hey everyone, welcome to Past Lives and the Divine. I'm Gina, the host of this podcast, where we roll in conversations about our connection with past lives and the divine out there and within each of us. And we do this for healing, maybe reaching our full potential in this life, whatever we came here to do or create or be, and to be entertained a little bit, to be honest. All right. So in today's episode number 3, we're talking about the anatomy of a past life regression session. And naturally, within this conversation, I am answering a few questions that have come up over and over, like, how do you deal with malevolent or negative energetics, entities, spirits around these sessions? Does it ever come up? How do you protect against it? What happens if it does come up? I'm answering that. I'm answering, what exactly is hypnosis? And what is this like a psychic reading? And do I have to be intuitive to do this? And what are some of the common fears that people have when they're actually, rolling into these sessions? How do we talk to angels and spirit guides? What does that have to do with these sessions? I talk about, is it scary? What if a client sees something that they're scared to see? That's a common question I get. What if I see something that's really scary? That's my big fear. So you'll really like this episode if you've been wondering, how does this actually work? What's actually happening? Or if you have any of those questions. So before we dive in today, I want to let you know it's a past life regression. So we talk about some, possibly triggering things. We talk about some deep stuff, some things that people have seen. So as long as you are okay with death or some things like that, just know, heads up, that's happening. Take care of yourself. And again, before we dive in today, next week's podcast, we're talking about a past life regression that I have had recently. I believe I had it earlier this year in 2019, and I was a bounty hunter and responsible for a lot of people's death. And so we talk about that life and the forgiveness and the healing that took place during the session and even after the session. So that is episode number 4. So make sure you subscribe so you do not miss it. So today, all right, gather around the fire. Let's get into it. Today's episode. Talking today about the anatomy of a past life regression session. What happens when someone schedules a session? So the moment a client schedules a session, my spirit guides and their spirit guides are working together to create a session or an experience for that client that will serve them for their highest and greatest good. And when I say highest and greatest good, I mean what's best for that soul at this time in their point of evolution. So with that, we just trust the creator, the universe, God, divine, goddess, whatever. We trust your higher power to do what your soul needs most in this session to help you along your personal and unique path of growth and evolution. And that is where you're at right now on Earth as this person. So that said, many clients come with a specific issue. So some people come to a past life regression and they're like, I don't know, I just want to try it. Or they're thinking, I don't know, it's been a while. I'm sure I've got some things to work on. So everyone who comes, I ask them to get a goal or an intention or the reason why, what they want to heal, what they want to experience, kind of what the goal of the session is. And so when they actually come to the session, the first part of the session is us chatting. So that's when I like to, if they're a first-time client, that's when we dig into kind of what are your spiritual beliefs? Because this session is for the client. It's not for me. So I do my best to use language, points of view that they agree with. It's very non-denominational. Of course, I have my own spiritual beliefs, but my role as the facilitator is to do just that. Facilitate a session, help this client get to a space that jives with their values, their point of view as a person here on Earth, so they can really go in and relax and go deep and do the work that they need to do. to get the results that they want to get. So sometimes that means people just show up, and the intention for the session can be as generic as show me a life or show me an experience that will help serve who I am in my life today. So something that'll make my life a little bit easier, a little bit more enjoyable. Or if you have something a little bit more specific, like a specific issue or a specific goal in mind for the session, that helps too. So this varies really person to person. So some people come, I've had more than a handful of stressed out moms come asking how to deal with a specific child's behavior or how to just be a better mom in general. I've also had people who want to help dealing with the relationship with their parents or help with a big decision in their life. So maybe they are an entrepreneur experiencing a lot of fear or experiencing a lot of stress or negative self-talk or any situation in their life, motherhood, entrepreneurship, work, friends, your partnership, your spouse relationship, your parental relationship, anything that's causing you drama, emotions that you feel like you can't control, or just extremely triggering. The intention for the session can be that we go in and see and experience life or life scenes that will help this client understand the issue better so they can take better action, release emotional baggage that's around that, or just, again, that clarifying, that understanding those insights into what it is and how to better deal with it in this life. And with those intentions, what I will say is sometimes people come out of the session and things are like immediately healed, right? Just simply bringing the unconscious to the conscious mind or the subconscious to the conscious mind can help us just really alleviate that, right? And you've probably noticed that in parts of your life, like something or someone is really bothering you, and then you understand why it is the way it is, and then all of a sudden it doesn't bother you anymore. So that's exactly what this is. And if you listen to episode number 2, the previous episode, I have a few examples of that, those types of quick healings from my own my very first past life regression. So if you haven't listened to that episode, go back and listen to it because we have some examples of that. Other healing that people might get is might be on a little bit more subtle level or deeper level. And so those healings or emotional kind of cleanups might take a little bit to be integrated fully in mind, body, and spirit. And sometimes that can take 3 or 4 weeks. I've had clients describe it as you don't even notice it's gone until all of a sudden you're in what was a triggering situation. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, that used to trigger me to feel anger, frustration, rage, sadness, whatever it is. And now it doesn't. And so it's like you don't even notice it's gone until you notice that this used to be a trigger and now it's not a trigger. It's very subtle. It happens deep in your subconscious mind. So that's the type of healing. But we always come in with an intention. And the intention, I believe we're setting that intention to make it clear to our guides and our angels as to what we want to see. But another way to think of that is you could be setting the intention so your subconscious mind is primed to give you the experience that will help you fulfill that intention or goal for the session. Also, in that space of time where we're chatting prior to actually going into trance, hypnosis, regression, where we see these past life scenes, we also talk about, if they have any fears, any questions about the session. And I would say the biggest fear or apprehension is, I don't know what's going to happen, which I of course go over with them, but also a fear of like, I don't think I can be hypnotized, or what if it doesn't work, or these feelings which are very human feelings of like, in some way I'm not going to be enough and this isn't going to work. And what I will tell people is the only thing you need in order for a hypnosis session to work is the willingness to relax, follow the guided visualization, follow the cues, and just really focus on my voice. And it really is that simple. You don't have to be psychic or really intuitive. Yes, there are some people who it's easier for them to get into hypnosis just because of their the way their brain works. But everyone that I've worked with is able to get there. Some people it might take a little longer, and that's totally okay. But that first session, it really, for everybody, takes a little bit longer. And just the more sessions you have, the better, the easier it is to get into that hypnotic state, the easier it is to access that information in your subconscious mind, not only in session, but also outside of session. Which is a common question that I get is, how many sessions do I need? Well, the way I personally do it is for my own healing and therapeutic reasons is my personal nature is just to notice emotional triggers, things that make me feel awful. I've struggled with anxiety and depression in my life. So if I'm like moving towards that end of the spectrum, I just pay attention to things. And my natural inclination is to move toward things that make me feel uncomfortable to learn a little bit more about myself. And so if I can't, like, for lack of a better term, self-help my way out of it, like if I can't read about something and figure it out that way, if I can't talk to someone and figure it out that way, then, or if I know like, oh, this person does this because of this, but it still really bothers me, like logically I get something, but in my body and in my emotional reactions, I can't control them. That for me is a good indicator that I need to go deeper and go into hypnosis. And my preferred path is past life regression, because you can experience past life scenes that are really, really parallel your own life. And you can oftentimes come away with more learning and understanding and insights and healing than your one goal or one intention that you go into the session with, which I think is so cool. So so what I say is when you notice yourself being triggered a lot, maybe that's a good time to go in. But for me personally, before I was actually facilitating these sessions and had people that I swapped sessions with, I would make it a point to go in at least once a year. And a few times I did go in with just the intention of, just show me a life, give me an experience with something that can help me where I'm at right now. But usually most of the time I would have a specific issue that I would go in. And then the amount of sessions, sometimes you can do one session and just like be totally released of that emotion or healed from whatever your intention or goal was of the session. But sometimes it takes a little bit more. So for example, if you have a really entangled, long soul history with another soul, it might take a few sessions to like get to the root of the issues, all the different issues, get to the root of them and actually heal them. And I will say that is so common with the parent-child relationship. So whether you're on the parent end or the child end, we come in and we choose our parents for specific reasons, for growth opportunities in this life. So sometimes they are gasoline on a fire of issues, and that's the type of growth. Or sometimes they're really supportive and help guide you in this life. And sometimes that is the growth support that you chose them for. But a lot of times with the parent-child relationship, it can be ground zero for all of our shit. It can be ground zero for every one of our issues. And a lot of times that relationship will take more than one session to really get to the bottom of it. But I will say you get healing along the journey. So even if you just did one session and didn't like totally heal that relationship, you do feel better in that relationship. And so a situation where if it's a parent-child relationship and that's what's triggering you and giving you a lot of emotions that you don't want in your life currently, then chances are maybe you will never be able to totally heal that relationship, because the growth opportunities are just like endless, right? And that's the whole point of life on Earth. And I'm not saying it necessarily has to be a parent-child, but I would say that's the most common, just because our parents are the people we choose, and we choose them, and we choose to come to Earth to learn lessons and evolve as a soul. So that makes sense to me. But sometimes it is a sibling, or it's a spouse, or it's someone you work with, or a type of person that keeps showing up in your life. So these are opportunities for growth. You will feel better with each session, and just the more sessions you do, the more healing you can get. And a lot of times you can get to the root of that issue and you can just totally release it. So it's not an issue for you anymore. And I will also say the more sessions you have, the deeper you go. So with each session that you have where you're accessing these memories in your subconscious mind, the more you do that, the easier it is to access those memories. It just becomes a well-worn path in your brain instead of, a zero path where you're bushwhacking trying to get one from one end to the other. So if you're craving to learn more about your soul's history and you just want to keep learning more and dig into it and having more and more richer and richer experiences, then the more sessions you do, the deeper you get. And not everyone craves that, and that's totally fine. You might be a one and done type of person, or you might be a never type of person and just want to listen to the podcast. That's totally fine too. But those are kind of the variables and the long answer to the short question of how many sessions do I need? And it really depends on you, depends on the issues, depends on the level of healing and the richness of the experiences that you want. And again, that's another thing I like about this work is it turns the expertise from the facilitator to you. Like you have the power to do your own healing. And that is what I love that about it, right? Sometimes we need to lean on someone. Sometimes we need to be shown a general direction, but we all have the innate power to do this healing, which is so amazing. So one last thing I'll say about the chatting and common fears that people have when they're about to go into session is they're a little nervous about what they're going to see. Like, am I going to be scared by what I see? Am I going to be traumatized by what I see? And out of of course, I can't speak for every person who's ever had a past life regression, of course. But what I will say for myself, for everyone I know who's gotten past life regression, and for everyone who has been a client in the chair where I'm facilitating the session, no one has ever come out of there feeling more traumatized than when they went in. So the thing is we've all been probably murdered in past life. We've all been the murderer possibly, or responsible for someone's death. We've all hurt people. We've all been hurt by people, all on some level, right? We've been the victim. We've been the perpetrator. And that's just the way life is. And while, of course, I can't speak for everyone, I'm sure there are some people who have been erred more on the side of victim in their past lives, and some people have been on the side of perpetrator more often in their past lives. But the point is that we all have this soul history within us. And not only within our own personal soul's history, but we all have the ability to access this universal consciousness, right? Elizabeth Gilbert talks about it in her book, Big Magic, where it's like this universal consciousness. And according to her, that's where ideas will come from. And so within this universal consciousness, if there's an invention on one side of the world and like on the exact same day, there's that same invention happening or a cool idea coming up on the other side of the planet. And it's the fact that there's this group consciousness that we all have access to, whether we believe so or not, whether we are accessing it and we believe that's going on or not, or maybe some people just don't even access it. But within that group consciousness is this soul knowing of what it's like to be a perpetrator, what it's like to be a victim, even if our personal soul has not had that experience. Okay, so we're getting kind of in the weeds. But in a session, if a client is in a situation, for example, I'll take myself as an example, and these are past lives that I will do podcasts on, but I've been stabbed in the back, I've been hung, I've had my throat slit, I've been stabbed in the stomach multiple times and bled to death. I've drowned, I've fallen off a ship, I've been pushed off a ship, I've been knocked out and then pushed off a ship. But what's cool is that you never get more than you can deal with. So what I will say first, as the facilitator, it is my job to physically hold space for you, right? I am beside you, you're relaxed in a chair, and I am leading you to these scenes. And when these scenes come to you, we're having dialogue about these scenes, okay? So it is my job to pay attention and notice if you're becoming agitated, bothered, or looking stressed, anxious in any way. When I notice that, and that's on an intuitive level, and physically I'm seeing it with my eyes, third dimension level, right? And with that, it's up to me to guide that person, to let them know that they're safe and they're protected and they can't be harmed right now. And that's to reassure them. And it's also hypnotic suggestions so their mind doesn't pick it up, right? So we've got two things kind of going there. Also, giving suggestions, letting them know if this is too much for you, you can pull out of the body in your memory. You can pull out of that scene and watch it as if you were floating above it, like at the ceiling of the room or floating above in the sky. You can watch the scene. You can watch it like it's on a TV screen or a movie screen, or we can just move on from this. Or you can know that you're safe and protected and actually be in this scene and feel these emotions. So for me, as a client in the chair, I have been in situations where I choose all three of those. And you are not lessening your learning. You get what you need. And sometimes people just need to go through it, right? Like it's uncomfortable, but they breathe through it and they go through it. And because of that, they're able to release emotions. They have additional insights that come in, no matter which way they take. But it's very much a joint effort, but it also, the subconscious mind is very protective of the soul, of the spirit, of the brain, of the body. And so you have a built-in piece that will help you not experience too much trauma. But that said, it's also a very important part of my job to notice if the client is being agitated or bothered and to help them move through that. And then when they come out of it, if they're like, whoa, I committed suicide, or whoa, I was a murderer, or whoa, I did something horrible to someone else. When someone comes out of that, it's not just those scenes that they're seeing, and I'm going to talk about this in a little bit, but we go through the death scene, and then we come out on the other side of the death scene to this safe spiritual realm where you can then, from a bird's eye view, from a non-emotionally attached view, get a view of that life and see why you made the decisions you made, what happened because of it, what you would do differently because of it. And in that safe spiritual space beyond the death scene, you are coming at it without a human ego or point of view of this is so bad, or this was so right and that was bad, or this person was good and you weren't. You're coming at it from a space of all knowing, because you know the thought process that got you there. You know what you did wrong. You're coming at it from a place of empathy. You're coming at it from a place of compassion and of learning. And so it's not to say you don't hold those negative things. So for example, next week I'll be talking about a life I had where I was a bounty hunter. And I had, at the end of that life, I actually committed suicide because it was too much, like the guilt and the people who died, and it's part of a bigger story. But with that, I carried with me in my soul a sense of just repulsion at myself. I'm not good enough. It was just another reason why I wasn't good enough, why the work you do doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you think you're good at it. No one cares. It always ends up being bad. Like, these are things that I carried on my soul. And as an entrepreneur, they weren't necessarily in the driver's seat, but they were very much in the back of my mind saying things every now and then, right? And they don't have to. So from that space, then I was able to forgive myself and forgive that train of thought and see it on a bigger soul history level. And that's another thing about when you see multiple past lives, you start to see how, like, the fabric of your soul, your soul's experiences are being weaved together into the very layered, very complex person that you are today. And from there, from that vantage point, you're able to release things that you no longer need, points of view, negative thought patterns, emotional triggers, and you're also able to understand and give compassion to things in your life today that are maybe a little bit more difficult, or parts of your personality that you're not super in love with, but you can't change them. And so it's a way to get even more compassion to yourself. And on a global kind of idealistic way of looking at it, it's like, wouldn't it be great if we all had these experiences? Our empathy would be like off the charts, and we would just have more love and compassion in this world for ourselves and for other people. And I just think that that would be, I don't want to say it would solve all our problems, but it would make a lot of our lives a lot better. So that is, in a nutshell, kind of the fear piece. And how do people deal with it when they're like, I'm afraid of what I'm going to see. And then actually when they're in a situation, if it is scary what they're seeing, how do we move through it? And one more thing I'll say about that is that most of the time, unfortunately, life on Earth is pretty boring. Like, it's a pretty average life, but the lessons, really spike up and down. So similar to the episode 2 that I did, that woman's life was so average and boring, but it was being inside of her mind that I was able to see the richness of the lessons, the highs and the lows, and how that paralleled my life today. And so I could look back on her life in that deathbed, very clear 10,000 foot view on what's really important in life, and see what she should have done different. And now I can apply that to my life today. So I think that is, that's a valid fear, and a lot of people have that, and that's a common question that I get. And we cover that in the session right before we go into trance. So next up, going into trance. So from there, we move from the chatting situation, and the client gets in the recliner chair and they recline, and we begin the hypnosis part of the session. Okay, so first, high level, what is the hypnosis part of the session? So I'll start very basic. I sit beside the client. The client is in a reclined chair. So they're reclined, relaxed, and some of them have a little blanket on if they want it. Some people have an eye mask on if they want it. These things are all available to them. And the client sits back, relaxed, and closes their eyes. So from there, I talk them through what is called an induction. And essentially an induction is, I have a yoga meditation background. So to me, that's a guided visualization. It's like a guided meditation. So if you've ever been in a yoga class or a meditation class, or maybe you have a meditation app on your phone, but if you're doing a meditation and someone is talking you through the relaxation, that's essentially what an induction is. And what we're doing is we're moving you through the 4 brainwave states, from the alert to the relaxed to the really relaxed, and then there's the sleeping brainwave state. And so we're moving to that third one where you're super relaxed, but you're not quite sleeping. And that's where we're moving your mind to. So basically, when we do that, it's easier for you to access your subconscious mind. And so now if you think about the different parts of your mind, right? You have the conscious mind, and that is the part of you that's setting goals and moving forward and comparing yourselves to other people. And I got to buy this and I got to do that. And this is what that looks like, right? This is the part of your mind that moves you forward in this world. And that part of your mind is not bad. It's an essential part of your mind, but it's the logical part of your brain. It's reasoning, analyzing, it's your willpower. It dominates our thinking in our awake state. So we want to move from not so much conscious mind into the subconscious mind. So our thought processes, our decisions and emotional reactions, they come from or are heavily influenced by our subconscious mind. And this part of our mind works kind of as a precursor to our conscious mind conscious thoughts, conscious actions. So the subconscious mind is like your operating system containing all your experiences, all your memories, all your beliefs, all your ideas on how things should be, from which then you live your life. So that's how it's like the precursor to your conscious mind. So your subconscious mind is like your operating system, right? It makes you, and the construction of it makes certain things easy and other things more difficult for you personally to have or achieve in your life. So as someone who I spent 15 years in the wellness industry, I was a personal trainer, I was a coach, I was a consultant for corporations and their wellness programs. And the big problem with the wellness industry, which they don't care because this is how they make money, but the big problem is they focus on your conscious mind, right? Eat this way, exercise this way. But what makes it easy for some people to just eat healthy? Or some people to abstain from alcohol? Or some people to... What makes it just easy for them to wake up and exercise? Why do they seem to have this drive for exercise? And it's all in the subconscious mind, in the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves and our thought processes, all of these things in our subconscious mind. So you can outsmart it in the short term for a little bit, but eventually it'll take over. So that's an example of the subconscious mind in a way that most of us are familiar with, because the wellness, diet, fitness, culture, and industry are everywhere. So hypnosis and regression work so well because you're working directly with changing the perspective or the reality of your subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind, it does not spend time analyzing information. It just accepts ideas, insights, wisdom, experiences. It just accepts these things as they are, as long as they're more in alignment with your morals and ethics on an even deeper level, right? So with hypnosis or regression, when a suggestion is offered or experience is had, which then gives you new insights and wisdoms, the information is going directly into your subconscious mind, aka your operating system, right? And so by doing this, you get your subconscious mind aligned with your life goals and intentions instead of setting out to make a change, working only with your conscious mind just to have your subconscious memories and beliefs and ideas get in the way and overpower those actions or whatever's needed to get to that goal. Like I said, I used to see this all the time as a wellness coach. And I call the subconscious mind the invisible influencer, meaning you can have all the good intentions in your conscious mind, but if not addressed, your subconscious mind will undermine your conscious actions every time in the long term. Yes, maybe you have a story in your head that prevents you from exercising, but you join a gym and you go every day for 21 days, and then on the 30th day you fall off. These are things that are stored in your subconscious mind, and it makes certain things easier for certain people, and it makes other things difficult for other people, and that is all the stuff in our subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is so powerful, and like I said, it's the precursor to our thoughts, to our actions. It's the operating system, really. So with that, in our subconscious mind is, like I said, the beliefs, the thought patterns, ideas on how things should be. But what's also stored in there is the memory of everything that's ever happened to us. And all of these memories contribute to all of the stories we tell ourselves, all of the thought patterns and ideas that are in our subconscious mind and dictating our conscious behaviors. So, if you are someone who believes in past lives, you're probably listening to this podcast, right? So that's probably you. So not only is it all of the memories of all of the things that ever happened to you in this life, but in every single life that your soul has had on earth, or if you are the type of soul who has been something else or been on a different planet or been in different dimensions, you would have those memories too that you'd be able to access, okay? So that is what we're doing. Basically, when we are going in and experiencing past lives, we are quieting the conscious mind and getting it to just kind of politely step to the side or get in the back seat or the trunk of the car, and the subconscious mind is driving. So when we move into that hypnosis part of the session, we do an induction where depending on the person, depending on how many times they've been in hypnosis, how many times they've worked with me, this induction, this guided visualization can take anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes. And then it's at that point where the client is then placed by my suggestions in the guided visualization. They come upon a scene where they begin to tell me what they're seeing. So sometimes this scene comes up because at the end of the guided visualization, maybe they're walking out of a tunnel and into a life scene. Maybe they're flying down from space and coming down onto Earth and into a life scene. Maybe they're opening a book and seeing a life scene. Maybe they're looking at a screen and seeing a life scene. So there are, many, many different ways to do an induction to facilitate someone to see a past life. But that is the guided portion. So that takes, 10 to 20 minutes, depending on the person and the history I have with that person. And then when they get to the space where they're experiencing the past life scenes, it is this simple. So I'm going to tell you how it can come into your mind. Okay. So you, as the listener, first, thanks for listening, of course. And what I'm going to do is paint a picture, and then I'm going to ask you a question, and you say the first thing that comes into your mind. Just snap quick, say the first thing that comes in your mind, okay? So visualize a table, okay? And on that table is a vase, and in that vase is a flower. And now what color is the flower? Okay? There's no wrong answer. If you said white, that's the color of the flower. Okay? If you said red, that's the color of the flower. There's no wrong answer. You just say what comes into your mind. Now, when I do that visualization, some people just have a knowing. I know it's a blue flower. Some people actually see it in their mind's eye. They can imagine it clearly in their mind's eye, right? So how you get that information doesn't matter, but what you're doing when you move into that past life scene is you're just simply reporting on what you see. You're not analyzing it. You're not wondering, why am I seeing this? Or what was that for? Or where are we going from here? So as the facilitator, that's when I start asking questions like, are you inside or are you outside? Look down at your feet. What are you wearing? And as the client, you just say the first thing that comes to your mind. And there is no wrong answer. And all you have to do is trust what comes to your mind. Now, as a first-time client, sometimes this can take a lot of effort. Sometimes it's pretty slow to get going. But as the facilitator, I'm asking a lot of questions really to prime your mind to start picking up details. And so that's why we ask a lot of questions, or at least I ask a lot of questions that don't necessarily have to do with like big fat life lessons, right? Like, what kind of shoes were you wearing in this life? It doesn't really matter. But what it does, it's like a real benign way for your subconscious mind to start picking up these memories and showing them to you. And just the more memories you do that with, the easier it gets. So it might be a little, labor intensive at first, but slowly it starts to come with you. So the first scene is usually pretty benign, and you just pick up those details and say it. And that's how we do it. We move from scene to scene. And when you're in these past lives, you experience emotions. It's like your senses are dialed up. You are aware that you're in the chair, aware of what's going on, but you're also, it's almost like a TV on in the background, right? When you're watching TV, you're aware that you're sitting on the couch, but you're super into the show. It's that sort of thing, except it's not a TV. It's like images in your mind. And it might not be images. It might just be knowings. It might be physical feelings in your body. It might be a smell. It might be a taste. So that's what it is. And we go through the scenes in a way that we kind of milk what we can out of the scene, get a lot of details, move to the next scene. And if there's people in the scene, so like if it's a past life scene where there's a crowd of people, then what I like to do is kind of pause that scene and have the client look around and just scan the crowd and see if anyone's energy sticks out, or if they're in a scene with a significant other or one other person, just see if the energy stands out. And sometimes that's when we can feel like, ooh, this is the same energy as my friend, or this is the same energy as my spouse. And that's kind of cool to be able to dive into that. Like I think I mentioned this in a previous podcast, but Alex, my husband, I have never gone to look for him in a past life, but he's shown up in, I think 3 or 4 of them, but he always has the same energy. And it's actually the same energy that he has today. And it's like the energy, the reason why we work, in my opinion. But so you can actually like you can pause scenes and like pull a little more out of it. You can read their energy, like, well, why, can you tell what, if someone, for example, I've been in a situation in a past life where the guardian I had was abusive. And so it wasn't necessarily like, why is she abusive, Gina? But it was like in this scene where this older woman was coming at me to abuse me. I was like kind of like an adopted child, even though that wasn't a thing back then. But she was my guardian. And it was like, you can kind of pause the scene and feel her energy. And right as the victim of this abuse, I could move beyond my point of view because it's a subconscious memory and we're accessing a deeper part of our mind, a more intuitive part of our mind. We can actually then, less biased, like read their energy, right? Where if I just think she's like an awful, mean person, I can actually read her energy and see that she's scared and wants the best for me. Right? That doesn't forgive her actions. That doesn't make me go, oh yeah, I deserve that. But having that point of view, for example, you can kind of get inside these people's minds. And to do that on a deep subconscious level definitely will help heal things, will help unravel messy emotional reactions. And so we have the ability to kind of like speed up time or slow down time in these past life scenes, which is cool. And then we move to the death scene. Eventually, we always come to the death scene because that's the one guaranteed thing in life, right? Now, what's so cool about the death scene is that a lot of people have an irrational fear about death, about them dying, other people dying. And I am not discounting, never am I discounting how traumatizing and awful life can be. I would never do that, right? I'd never mean to be flippant about someone's issues or about their victimization or things that have happened to them. That's absolutely not what I'm doing, and that is not my point of view about life on Earth. Life on Earth is very heavy and it's very difficult. And one of the things that I think is so cool about past life regression is that it pulls us out of this serious, frightening, terrifying place of feeling really heavy and victimized in this life today. It can help pull us out to think, hey, that's what life is for. We mess up, we do it over again. We fuck up, we get another chance. And whether it's over and over in one life or over and over across the span of many lives, what I think is so cool about past life regression is it really can help take the heaviness and the seriousness out of this life on Earth. To think of it as like, I know people joke and they're like, YOLO, and it's like, fuck, that's awful. Like, I only get one chance, right? But, and I say it over and over, and I always say this and I always believe it. I never mean to minimize anyone's trauma. Never. And I think that what we choose to believe spiritually needs to serve us. It needs to make us feel better in general. It needs to help us move through life in a way where we can enjoy it just a little bit more. And if that is the YOLO mentality for you, then like, so be it. But for me personally, it just doesn't feel great. And so for past life regression, it really takes out like the heaviness and the seriousness and that fucking driving thought where it's like, I gotta get it right. And so it really brings like a levity to it. And it kind of seems like the climax of that is the death scene, right? Because we're all afraid of death. Like that is one of the things like that a lot of us struggle with, right? Like if I look at my sweet little dog Tula and I'm like, oh, I love you so much, immediately death fear comes in, right? Like, oh God, what happens if she dies? It's this, right? It's kind of like the flip side of the love coin. Like, what am I going to do when you're gone? And it's not to minimize that, but I think we all have a really irrational fear around it. And I think that can dictate some of our behaviors, which don't always serve us for the highest and greatest good and helping us enjoy this life a little bit more. So what's so cool about the death scene is if you ask anybody on their deathbed, they're never going to be like, I wish I would have made more money. I wish I would have spent less time with my friends. I wish I would have worked more and relaxed less, right? Like typical deathbed. And let me know what you think about this if you feel like it's different. But for me, in my point of view, typical deathbed chatter is like really grand, like wonderful statements about life. Like, family is the only thing that matters. I wish I didn't work as much. You know what means more than money? Knowing my family loves me and they know that I love them. Being able to do for other people what I really want to do for them. Being able to do for myself what I want to do for myself. These are all like grand things that we all know about the deathbed reflection, right? Again, logically we know it, but that is not the space where we make our goals. That's not the space where we make daily decisions. Our daily decisions come from that conscious mind and like comparison and keep up and consume. And so that's another benefit of like actually experiencing a death scene in a past life regression because you're safe, you can't be harmed, and you can really move through it and see it. And another thing that I believe, and possibly this is why I believe it, it's very anecdotal. I believe it because it is the case for me in every death scene I've experienced. And it is the case for the clients that I know personally, like I know their personal lives. When they have a death scene, it just gets branded on your soul. So all of these memories we carry with us, life to life to life, they serve us or they hold us back. There's both. And then the thoughts and memories that we have from a death scene just get like seared into us. We're just like branded with it, right? So something I like to ask a client is, as your soul is leaving your body, what is your thoughts? Like, what are your thoughts as your soul leaves your body? What are your thoughts? And for example, in episode 2, my thoughts when my soul left my body was like, get me out of here. This is so boring. Like, I hate this life. This is so boring. And it's probably one of the reasons why I live my life. Well, I know it is one of the reasons why I live my life today, because I just think a life where we don't ever experience ups and downs, where we're so fearful that we keep ourselves tucked in a little ball and we never take risks and we never tell people how we feel and we never do what we want. Like, that's so boring. And some people might need that boring and that safety in this life. And there's no judgment on that, of course. I think we all go through some lives that are a little more erratic than others. Some we play a little more safe than others, and that's all part of the process, and that's more than okay. But when I look back on my soul's history, I can see that plays a role in how I live today, like almost like this fear of being trapped by myself, this fear of boredom, this fear of not living to the fullest. And so when we have these thoughts, and common thoughts that I've heard, variables off these topics are like, I'm never enough. It doesn't matter what I do. I always fuck it up. I'm afraid of men. I hate men. I'm the worst person in the world. I don't know why anyone loves me. I shouldn't be doing this. I'm not qualified for this. I'm not enough. These are all things that just become like branded on our soul, right? People are no good. That's another one. And that's another cool thing about the death scene is a lot of times what we're thinking when our soul leaves our body just gets so deeply branded in us that it can be a subconscious tenet in which we live our life by. And that's not always good, especially if you've been like murdered in a past life. So for me personally, it's been like, I'm no good, it doesn't matter what I do, or all of these people are awful. It's just, these are not rational thoughts. Like, we can do better, right? It's not the end of the world if you never fix these, but I just like to think we can do better. So why not give it a try, right? Another reason why I like the death scene is because when people come out of it, they see like, oh, it's not that scary. And I think when we see that, we become less afraid for other people to die. Now, my little wiener dog passed away in February, and she was my best friend for 15 years, and I still cry about it some days. And I still can't believe she's gone some days. But I will say, doing all this past life regression stuff, just my own experience, things I've seen with clients, what I'm not struggling with, I'm struggling with the sadness of her not being here. But what I'm not struggling with is I don't know where she is. Is she scared? Was that awful for her, the way she died? And based on what I know, or what I think I know, what I believe, is that, yeah, she was fine. She's fine now. She's better off now than she was when she was here. We're all better off on the other side. Like, it's all so great on the other side. So that doesn't mean I don't miss her, or I don't wasn't super depressed after she died, but at least I'm not grappling with that, right? That goes back with, I just want to feel a little better. And that's what this can do. And the death scene can definitely do that. So after the death scene, we move on into a safe spiritual realm. It's safe. It's a place where we can get guidance and insights. It's a place where we connect with our higher self. It's a place where we can connect with our spirit guides, or our angels, or guardian angels, or whoever it is that's looking out for you. Sometimes I've known people who have connected with children that they've wanted but hadn't had yet, and they've since had these children, which is pretty cool. I've known people who have connected with siblings that have passed away. I know people who have connected with parentals that have passed away. It's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool space. So by the time you get to the death scene, most people are in this hypnotic trance from the induction, the very beginning, through the past life scenes, the death scene. This maybe takes anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes. And that really just depends on how quickly you see these scenes. You know, if it's your first past life, it probably takes 45 minutes to kind of get through all this. But as the client in the chair, you're accessing your subconscious part of your mind. Some people would say you're accessing the fourth dimension or the fifth dimension where time doesn't really exist. And so you don't really know, I don't know, have I been in trance for 2 minutes or 2 hours? There's kind of this feeling of it went by so fast, but I saw so much. So maybe it seems like it took longer. But that's kind of the timing on it. So after the death scene, you're still in trance, still deeply into your subconscious mind. And it's at this point where insights and wisdom and intuitive answers to the questions that I'm asking come the easiest that they come throughout the entire session, just because you have all of these past life scenes behind you, where you're priming your subconscious mind to, pick up that information and deposit it into the part of your brain where you can into the more conscious part of your brain. So, after many scenes of doing that, many details of doing that, it becomes easier and easier. And it's in this safe spiritual realm where I then start to ask the client questions like, what was the reason why you saw this past life? How can this help you today? And then I also will ask questions here. So in the chatting portion, a lot of times clients will come and they'll be like, I don't know, I kind of have 3 goals. Or they'll be like, I have 3 goals and a bunch of questions in my life. And I always encourage them to just kind of get their questions out, because it's in this safe spiritual space, this spiritual realm portion, where I always think of it as what questions, if you had a psychic in front of you and you believed that in psychics, what questions would you ask them? And you may or may not get answers to these, but hey, we're in that spiritual space. You're so connected to your higher self and your spirit guides and your angels and your subconscious mind. Why not just ask these questions and see what you get? Because here's the thing, if you are the type of person to go to a psychic, or whether you've gone or you slightly believe, if it's not a total charlatan, there are people with real psychic intuitive gifts, right? And so what they're doing when they read you in a psychic reading is they're actually reading your higher self. They're reading your spirit guides, your angels. They're reading some past life stuff. They're reading some life plan stuff. Like, what are you here? After we die, we go into the astral plane as well. And that's when we kind of plan out our next life. Who are my parents? What's my body going to look like? All this stuff. There's a reason for everything in your life. And so, with that, in this safe spiritual realm that we move our psyches to after the death scene of a past life, that's when you can get this information. So just like, I don't know how many minutes ago when I asked you, envision a table, envision a vase, envision a flower, what color's the flower? It's similar to that. So for example, you might ask I had someone ask a question of, I guess this has happened a couple times, so I don't know the specific words, but like the idea behind the question was, okay, well, I have a question of, should my husband and I try for a baby this year, or should we wait? Or do we not try and it's just going to happen on accident, right? And there are some things that we are just not meant to know right now. And I believe that's true. And the answer to that question was, you don't need the answer to that question. So sometimes no guidance is guidance, right? Stop thinking about it. This isn't for you to know right now. This isn't something you can control. And then I know another woman who, in that spiritual space or that spiritual realm where you can ask these questions, and as the facilitator is asking the question for you, right? And then as the client, you are getting the information and then relaying it, just saying it out loud. And sometimes people don't say it out loud. Sometimes they just want that answer for themselves and they don't say it out loud, which is totally fine. But one woman who was trying to get pregnant and was like, I don't know, maybe I'm just supposed to have one kid and not two kids. And what came through was, it was very clear to her that it was a little girl, and the little girl was saying, yes, but just not yet. And then it was like, I think a little over a year later, she actually had a little girl. So it's pretty cool what we can see there. And we kind of become our own psychic, right? We get access to our guides, to other people's souls, if they allow it, to our higher self. And that's pretty cool. So other questions might be in the realm of like, what can I do to take care of my body? What can I do to become healthier, right? Health is a big thing, whether you're into it or not. It can be a pretty toxic thing too, the whole race for good health. But some people are like, I want to feel better. What do I need to do? I feel like I'm bogged down, not creative. Like I was working with a woman who does writing, and she's like, I just feel bogged down, creative. What do I, creatively blocked. What do I need to do? And it was like very clear. It came through like, you're drinking too much soda. And she was like, shit, I am. And I knew it. Like after the session, she was like, I was like, that's interesting. Like I'm always interested. It's like, I must be subconsciously skeptical of all of this because I'm always surprised at like, when a client will say something in session and I'm just like, in my mind, I'm like, what the hell was that? Weird, But then afterward, the client's always like, I knew that. I needed to hear that. And it was very clear. So when people get answers to these questions, then what I like to ask is, because I think it's a cool thing to ask, and I want to know because I'm curious, and I think it's a great thing for the client to know, is like, well, who's giving you these answers? And sometimes people are like, it's from my higher self. Like they just know it's from my higher self. And what's cool about that is like, cool. See, you already knew. You already know these answers. You just have to get quiet and sink into the question and intuitively get that hit and go with it, right? And sometimes people will be like, it's my spirit guide, which is so cool because when you meet a spirit guide, it's very... When you have contact with your angels or your spirit guides, it is this feeling of unearthly eternal, unconditional love. It is if you think of the person who you think loves you the most on this earth, and you just like make that love even more pure and louder, stronger, more encompassing, more just like swallow your body whole, like that is what it is. Like when I have clients who come to meet, they come to a session with the intention to meet a spirit guide or their guardian angel. And this is not a session we do first because that's a lot of pressure, right? Oh my God, you're going to meet your spirit guide. And so I like them to have at least one past life regression with me in their history so they can really get a feel for like how you're picking up this intuitive information. And so they know they're not making it up. Because when I can, as the facilitator, I know when someone makes contact with their spirit guide because it is very, every single time anyone has, it's tears because the feeling of love and acceptance and I don't know, just love and acceptance is overwhelming. It's overwhelming. It's like nothing you've ever experienced on earth. And all we can do as humans is like overflow with it. Like it is bigger than our container. It is more than we could ever think we would ever need. And it just like overflows in tears. And it's just such a cool thing to see. And being in that space of, some people might say kind of like half in another dimension, half out of another dimension, even though I'm in my conscious mind and I'm not in trance, just being beside someone and leading them through that process, my channels are open as well. And so I can feel it when they're feeling it. I feel it maybe 10% of what they're feeling, but like it brings tears to my eyes. And so it's just a really, really cool thing. And what I'll say here quick, because I've gotten this question a few times and I keep meaning to answer it on Instagram, but it's kind of a longer answer, and Instagram is just such short format for an old windbag like me. So the question is like, how do you know or protect yourself, or what happens if you encounter a malevolent spirit or a malevolent energetic entity? So that might be like the devil, him or herself, just other, I don't like to use the terms light and dark, but just other like malevolent rather than benevolent spiritual entity. Like if it's an attachment to someone, if it's someone trying to give faulty advice in the safe spiritual realm, how do you know? How do you know you're not towing this line? So what I will say is your senses are very heightened when you're in this type of trance. And my senses are very heightened when I'm leading someone through this type of hypnotic state and this past life experience. So with that, it is very clear you can feel the energy of someone or something, right? So as humans, a lot of times we don't see how powerful we are. So let's take, for example, a ghost in your house. Maybe it's like a mean ghost or mean entity in someone's house, right? We right away feel overpowered by that, right? Like they're more powerful. And we are trained in this society. We give our power away to everyone. We want to have a psychedelic experience. We take drugs. We want to figure out our health, so we give all our power to the doctor and the medical and the pharmaceutical industries, who oftentimes don't have our best interests at heart, or they don't have the whole picture. And so even if they do have your best interests, they can't operate as powerfully as you would if you got in the driver's seat, right? We give all our power away to people who have a PhD. We give all our power away to everyone else, and we always discount who we are, which is we are human and spirit, and our life experiences, not only in this life, but in past lives. And that's just the culture we live in, right? The more money you have, the more education you have, the higher the pedestal. And I'm not saying that those people don't deserve a pedestal, but even those people, I think, discount their power and hang it all on their PhD diploma or MD diploma. So what am I saying here? I'm saying as spirit and human, we are twice as powerful as any malevolent force. Every single one of us is. We just need to fill up and occupy that power. And one way we do that is by having it explained to you how fucking powerful we all really are. And so, part of my training, a training that I did, part of it was how to deal with actually malevolent or negative energy entities, that sort of thing. So whether it's an attachment on someone's body, on my own body, whether it's like a ghost floating around a house, whether it is a malevolent energy showing up in some sort of trance situation. So I've actually, believe it or not, as odd as that may sound to you, I have training on it. And it was like, the best, just some of the most entertaining 8 hours of a training you could ever imagine, talking about like ghost hunting and negative entity releasement and all these things. So what I will tell you is that there are some telltale signs, and it's kind of, there's so many situations in which this can happen, not just in a trance setting, but there are so many signs of a malevolent energy. And if you know what to look for, it's pretty easy to spot. And not that I would intentionally go spend time in spaces with negative energies or attachments or earthbound spirits. But I do think we do a disservice by like those ghost hunting shows, how they just like aggravate the ghosts and then roll out. I think it's up to us if we have the skills to, release them off the earth plane, send them to the white light. Like they're a soul too. They're just like earthbound, and we'd all be probably angry and agitated and borderline violent, if not outright violent, if we were trapped in a world where nothing made sense and whatever it is, if it's like a angry house ghost or someone else roaming the land. So anyway, going off on a tangent, you can feel these energies, right? Like I have helped people get rid of negative things in their basements, or I actually went through some of the most terrifying 6 weeks of my life, almost 8 years ago or something like that, where I had some negative energy vortex situation in my basement in the house I lived in. And it was like terrifying and awful. And the big reason I was so terrified was because I felt like I was a victim in the situation. I felt like I didn't have any power. And the person who was cleansing my house was new at it, and she didn't know what she was doing either. And if I could go back and talk to myself, it would be like, no, here's how you're more powerful than this, and here's what we're going to do. And I think that when we come at it from a victim point of view, like, oh, we can't control this, then they will control the situation, because that's the nature of a malevolent entity. But if we come at it with the right psychic defenses in place and knowing what to look for and what to feel for, you cannot mistake this energy. Like, you just can't. Like, I have felt the most beautiful energies being in trance, being in the spiritual space, having out-of-body experiences, and I have felt some super negative, disgusting, heavy energies attached to people and or in someone's house or anything like that, earthbound stuff. And it's just, you cannot mistake that feeling. You can't. And there are things that you can do to protect it. So, for example, in these sessions itself, I do cleansing rituals and prayer, like protection prayers. And I have my own guide who is there. His name is Raman, and he is there for my protection. And sometimes, in situations, he's there for everyone's protection, right? If you're by me, if you're in this situation, even just Raman alone will protect us both. And I've seen him spontaneously. I was having an out-of-body experience the first time, or not the first time I saw him, but one of the times I saw him, I was having an out-of-body experience. And I'm getting weird here, you guys. I was having an out-of-body experience on purpose, And I floated up out of my body, out of my condo. And I understand how weird this sounds, but it's the truth. And I was like, for lack of a better term, like playing around with one of my spirit guides. And when I came back into the room to come back into my body, I came back in through like these tall windows I have on one wall of my condo. And I came back in and I could see Raman. He was just kneeling beside me watching me. Like, he is just like, he is always there. He's always there. And when I'm scared, I feel out for him and I feel him. And so we all have spirit guides that help protect us. And I think that the stronger our relationship with them, the better job that they can do, because we don't get in the way, right? And we all do a better job when we feel appreciated and acknowledged. And I think that spirit guides are the same. So that I also, when I'm putting someone in through the induction, I'm guiding them to put up their own psychic defenses. And right along with them, as I'm saying the words, I'm putting up my own psychic defenses. So it's about being knowledgeable about what they feel like and setting up the right defenses and know how to release these things when they present themselves. So I've never had a spontaneous, like, malevolent energy trying to get into a session. But I have had a session, for example, where a couple different times someone has seen or been around, like either someone has an attachment, and depending on who you ask, some people will say like we all have these attachments. So for example, one session I was doing, I had an attachment kind of in my mid back, and it was just like this black smoke, I guess, for lack of a better term, but it was attached and it was fear. And so it was just like lifetime after lifetime that evoked fear. It's just like, just like kind of in a weird corner on a river, how, sludge and garbage can kind of start to swirl around. It's just like these things kind of add up and then they attach to us. So sometimes people have attachments that don't really bother them. Some people have attachments that totally do. Some people have attachments like an earthbound spirit has attached to them. And so sometimes it's just like negative emotions that are like all over their body. So I've led people through different things where they were able to like actually release these things. And just recently this summer, I think it was a couple months ago, I had a woman who had what she thought was some sort of attachment, and we were able to release it. And I could tell she was a little scared. So like where we were like in a church in her past life scene. And we just stepped out of that church. So she didn't have to watch it go down. And she could just kind of like report on it. Almost like she was hearing it instead of seeing it, maybe, was my visual. And we were able to release that. And after she released that entity attachment, she was able to see her spirit guide. So it's something I'm trained in, but it's not like, oh, I have this education so I can do it. It's just I'm trained in how to use my power. And we all have this power, and some of us use it and we don't know it, and some of us don't even know we have it, and so we don't even use it. And so then we can experience a lot of fear around that. So that is the long answer to the short question of, do you ever encounter malevolent spirits? What happens when this happens? And there you go. That is the long answer to that short question. So another question I've gotten a few times from people is something to the effect of like, is this a session where I can get at, maybe like the frequency of energy I'm putting off as to why I keep attracting a-holes in my life, or some form of variation on that question. And that is something that people have asked in these sessions, right? Like I know one person who keeps attracting the same kind of manager at work, or the same kind of boss at work, or the same type of like situation keeps happening with friends, or the same type of situation keeps happening, maybe leading to like breakups of relationships. If you're someone who would like a long-term relationship and there's like the same kind of theme that keeps running through, this is a situation where you could like drill down and be like, what is my question? Or what do I need to heal around this? And if you knew the answers to those questions, then you could actually do a past life regression where you dive into, like, what do I need to understand about this so I can heal it and release it, sort of thing. But if it wasn't something where you were like, I don't think it's necessarily an issue where I would do a full-on session about it, it would be a question that you could bring up, or you could tell the facilitator, me, to bring up during this safe spiritual realm part of the reading, where you can gain insights on why you saw this past life, get any more clarity or answers around your intentions and goals for that session, and also answer some certain questions that you might have. And this is where you could insert that question. Because we do get themes in our life. Relationships bring up a lot within us. They trigger a lot within us. And that's just the nature of the relationships, right? Like life on earth, it's my belief that we come here to learn lessons and to evolve as a soul. And one of the ways we do that is by relationships with people. So whether it's the same type of people at work that you keep running into, or the same types of issues that keep coming up with your parents or your kids or your spouse, these are all places where we can grow. And I'm not saying, like, if you are in an abusive relationship, you show up and grow your way through that abuse. Sometimes growing is like standing up for yourself, or putting up boundaries, or leaving a certain situation instead of continuing to engage. I, of course, am never telling anyone that they need to just grind out a situation in which they're victim of abuse or any other violence, anything like that. So sometimes it can literally be, the lesson is stand up for yourself and move on. I, of course, do not know what it's like for everybody. That is not what I'm saying. I'm not saying you are attracting these awful people in your life. I'm saying the only thing that we can do is look at these situations and be like, what am I bringing to this table? And are these behaviors that I can change within me to help me move up and out of these situations? So I'm not discounting any sort of victimhood or anything like that. But what I am promoting is a way for us to access our own power and rise up out of that victimhood and be a leader for ourselves and be a leader for other people and do the best that we can with what we have, and to have compassion and empathy for other people in their life situations, whether we agree with it or not. That's all we can do. That's all anyone needs. And so to be able to give that compassion and empathy to ourselves and access our own personal power to make our own lives better, that's the point of it all, in my opinion. So you can definitely start to see those themes, and sometimes when we need to learn a lesson, or maybe some people think of it as like, if you're vibrating at a certain frequency, you're going to attract those same people in. No matter what it is, it seems like there is some sort of law of attraction in the earth, right? And so this is just one way that you could dive into it, maybe understand it, maybe release it, gain some insights so you can deal with it. And this would be a space where you could do that as well. So once we've fulfilled the goals, the intention for the session, and asked any questions that needed to be asked, then I will oftentimes, the last question I ask, is there anything else that this client needs to know before we move on from this space? And sometimes there is a little nugget of wisdom, sometimes there isn't, and they're ready to come back. So from there, we come back. And before we come back, throughout what I also want to say about this safe spiritual realm, that's also where we find out, like, what's not only what is the reason for them having this past life regression or being shown these past life scenes in this session, but also if they're carrying any physical, mental, emotional residues from that life that they no longer need anymore. Then we would go through different modalities, and there's many, many different modalities, to release this emotional baggage that they're carrying with them that they no longer need to carry with them. So the thought is like, we carry that not only in our souls, but in our DNA. We can physically hold it in our cells. It can result in chronic disease, chronic pain, or it can just be like, yeah, when I feel rage, I feel it in my arms, and we can help to relieve and get that energy out of there before it festers and maybe leads to maybe some chronic pain or chronic disease. So sometimes that's a way in on that, is to those modalities to help release that emotional, mental, physical stuff that we might still be carrying from that past life. And then we can actually like fully let it go on a cellular level as well. So from there, we move out of that space. I always like to give thanks and love to our past life selves, anyone else in that past life who has been beneficial, or we want to send, love and gratitude to, also to our higher selves and our spirit guides and our angels for always being with us. And then I talk the client out of trance. And then from there, they slowly kind of wake up. And, if there's been an emotional release, if they have tears, they might want to blow their nose or wipe their face, which is totally common. That emotional release is also another way to get that emotional baggage kind of out of your body. So, and then from there, sometimes clients like to chat a little bit about what they saw or ask some questions, or I might ask them questions just to make sure, if I'm like, man, I don't know if they totally got the answer to something, or do they need to think about something a little bit more. I might like ask them a couple more questions just so they can continue to process whatever it is that we saw. And if they have any questions, and then, then they just roll out and roll on with their day. And like I said, the healing sometimes takes place immediately. Sometimes it can take a few weeks to kind of settle in subtly, mind, body, spirit situation. And when people leave, some people feel energized and really clear. Some people feel kind of groggy and really relaxed. And all of it is totally normal based on who you are and what you saw. If you had a big emotional release or multiple kind of emotional releases, maybe you were crying, maybe you were laughing, maybe we did a modality where you were envisioning getting some things out of your physical body, that sometimes can leave you a little bit exhausted. So I like to tell people, like, if they can work time in the rest of their day to honor their body a little more, maybe work in time so they can move a little slower, have a little more downtime if they can, or at the very least, like, go to bed a little bit early, maybe spend some time journaling afterward to get it out, or find a friend to talk to about it, just to verbally continue to process. That can help some people too. So there you have it. That is the anatomy, what goes on bit by bit in a past life regression session. And as you've heard me say before, my favorite part of these conversations is talking to you, people like you. Yes, you. I'd love to hear your reactions or your questions about all of this, because here's the thing. I've been, ears deep in this stuff for not quite 5 years, but the truth is I don't necessarily have a beginner's mindset about it. And my whole point to this podcast is I want to answer people's questions about it. So when I say things, or when I maybe I say a word or bring up a topic and you're like, wait, I have no idea what that is, or wait, why do you think that, or wait, what do you think about this? Let me know, because you're not the only one with that question, and that's what I want to know. I don't have that beginner's mind anymore when it comes to this. So I want to hear your thoughts about it. So here's how you can do that. You can go to pastlivesandthedivine.com and hit subscribe. You can email me. So when you hit subscribe, I will be sending you an email, and you can just hit respond to that email, hit reply, and let me know what you thought. Questions, reactions. And then another way you can do it is you can go to Instagram, pastlives.tourguide, and you can comment on one of my pictures. You can comment, you can send me a direct message, and let me know questions, what you thought. So those are 2 ways that you can do it. So here's the thing. This podcast is free. And if you loved it and you were like, oh, I loved it and I got it for free, and this is a lopsided, energetic flow, what you could do to return the favor is you could go to Apple Podcasts or iTunes or wherever you get it, and wherever you get this podcast episode, and give me a 5-star review and leave a review. Maybe type some words. It doesn't have to be long. But I've got a couple people who have done that, and I really appreciate it. And it helps keep the conversation going, because with that, more people might find it. And then we can keep this conversation going. I have no desire or intention to let this podcast be a thing where I just talk into the black hole, the abyss. So please engage with me. Let me know what you thought. All right, remember the next episode, episode 4, I'm going to be talking about a past life where I am a bounty hunter and how I came to the demise in that life. So tune in, wait for that. And I'd love to tell you that it is released via email. So go to pastlivesandthedivine.com, hit subscribe, and I'd love your email address, and I will send you a friendly email when that is up and ready to rock. Thank you so much for listening and being open to the power of past lives in all of our soul's eternal experiences while we walk this third dimension Earth. So take anything from this episode that makes you feel better and just leave the rest. See you next time.